Deathstroke has always been one of my favorite DC villains ever. His ability to keep up with metas is astounding. He's literally him, and I figured it's been a minute since I've done one of the Bat family related what ifs, since I've already done Red Hood Deku, Batman Deku, Joker Deku, and I've even done a Nightwing Deku and a Robin Deku, so I figured it would only be right if I covered a Deathstroke Deku. So here it is, and for this particular video, ladies and gentlemen, the like goal is gonna be 2,000. Oh wait, no, 2,000. Y'all can hit that. 1,000 likes, my bad. 1,000 likes. But with all that out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
Sorry, kid, it's not gonna happen, would be the words that would change Izuku's life forever. Before this, he was excited, happy, and his mom even held that hope that her son could maybe one day become a pro hero and get them out of the situation they were living in. Inko Midoriya had had a son with Hiashi, he left him, and so she was struggling. As a single mother, she figured that as soon as Izuku became a hero that everything would change, but now that she hears he's quirkless now, she has no hope of ever getting out of her worthless situation. He's nothing to her now. And she would look at Izuku with disdain, disgust, and would judge him just like everybody else in the My Hero Academia universe. Being quirkless is very, very hard. And this time around, being quirkless is even more rare than it would be in the original My Hero Academia. A couple of changes that would be made to this world is going to be the following. That Izuku is actually going to be starting UA when he actually turns the age of 18. Now, I'm upgrading the age that people go into that because of a certain reason. Just the characteristics of Deathstroke and the amount of training that Izuku is going to have to do just would not be possible whatsoever at 14. 18, it gets to the realm of possibility, but because of that and because of the nature of this story, I'm going to be needing to do things this way. That said though, Izuku would be told that he has no quirk and his mom hates him. He grows up having a very, very, very rough childhood. Bakugo beats on him. Everybody pretty much thinks that he's just a loser, that he's an outcast, and whenever people don't bully him, they kind of just look at him in this weird way. Not with disgust as much, but they all just feel bad for him, and Izuku's just so tired of it. He's tired of getting bullied, and one day he finally decides to do something about it. He trains and trains and trains. When he gets home, he punches trees over and over and over. Crunches, sit-ups, push-ups, you name it, any single body exercise that Izuku could think of, he would do them. And every time he would go on the computer, he would look up different ways of fighting, different ways of exercising, and ultimately trying to train at home. His training would be very, very, very intense. And eventually Izuku would find himself becoming very, very, very strong. Eventually Izuku would turn 8 years old, and after 4 years of training, he'd be very, very skilled at fighting. One day, however, Bakugo would mess with him a little too much, and Deku would try to fight back. However, what Bakugo would realize is that Izuku is actually kind of capable. So one explosion to the face would be all it takes, and this explosion would kind of would leave like a weird scar on his chest because Izuku would have like slightly dodged it, and the explosion that would have hit would have kind of like damaged his eye. Like it exploded his chest and it gave him a big massive scar, and the explosion pieces just like went to his eye. Like it hit his face a little bit, but it mainly hit his eye, and it kind of just messed up his vision in that one eye. And now he's going to be needing equipment to be able to see out of that eye, and most of the time he won't even be able to see without it. Something that Izuku would have to battle with, but Izuku decides that he's not going to give up. He's still going to become a hero, and even though it would be reported by Izuku, nobody would do nothing because Inko doesn't come to the school to worry about things, and because she doesn't, the school would say that it's a lost case. Mizuki would get angry with Bakugo, and Bakugo would pretty much continue bullying Deku. 2 more years would pass, and Izuku would turn 10 years old. On this particular day, Bakugo pushes him very, very far. In the cafeteria, Bakugo would end up arriving with his goons and talking complete trash to Deku, making him feel like a failure, like an outcast, like a loser. It's Not pretty. And Izuku gets tired. He decides that, well, yes, he is scared of Bakugo. He's tired of getting messed with. And sometimes you have to step up for yourself. Step up for what's right. And that's what Izuku's gonna do. He looks to the direction of Bakugo, and with this look of just anger in his eyes, he would rush in. He would then punch Bakugo square in the jaw before Bakugo could have even reacted, moving at speeds that Bakugo didn't expect from Izuku. And then Izuku would jump on top of Bakugo before pummeling him and punching him over and over and over and over and over and over. His goons would then jump in the way and kick Deku onto the floor. He would hit the ground, his head would thump at the floor, but he, feeling so much rage, he just wouldn't care. The adrenaline is just rushing through his veins, and he then turns to them with this angry expression in his face before lunging in at one of them, sticking his finger in one of the kid's eyes and making sure that he was blinded permanently, and then rushing in at the other kid that had a wing quirk and pretty much punching him in the jaw so hard he almost shatters it. He then looks back to Bakugo, who would be getting up. Bakugo rushing towards him, about to throw an explosion. Deku weaves, grabs his arm, and judo flips him onto the ground, before then stomping him in the chest and saying, "How does that feel, Bakugo, to be beneath a quirkless kid's foot?" People who would be watching would be just shocked, fearful, and amazed at the same time at what Izuku was doing to one of their most powerful students. Eventually, teachers would walk inside, and seeing that Izuku was doing this, they would scream at him saying, "You're expelled! You're expelled! How could you do this?" And Deku would just run away. Eventually, he would make his way home, and once he arrives home, Inko goes on to get a call from the school, and she would beat on Deku. However, Deku would grab her by the hand and with tears in his face would say, "Never again," before then snapping her arm, grabbing a bag full of all of his necessities, grabbing his mom's laptop, which is like the only thing that she really has of value in the house, and disappears. She never hears anything from him again. She doesn't even put out a search warrant or nothing. She's just like, good riddance. Like, I don't like that kid. I don't like the look of you. Like, get out of here. Eventually, she goes to the gym, gets back in shape, gets back on the market, pretends she never had a kid whatsoever, and would end up getting married with another man later on in life. A man that has a lot more money, way more than Hisashi, and somebody who doesn't run away on her. She eventually has another child, and during this time, Izuku would spend 4 entire long, hard years training in the forest. And what would Izuku do? He would learn multiple different things. In the forest, he would learn how to survive with nothing but water, a little pocket knife, and his bare hands. Izuku would kind of learn savage ways of fighting, and through his time of being in the forest, he would learn to use his computer and come over towards towns like every now and then, do a little bit of research, look up different fighting styles, and ultimately find out ways of camping, find out ways of building sheds, find out ways of making little cool water supplies, and that he would just learn different DIY things. And using all of that, Izuku would train and train and train and train and get very, very powerful. Eventually, though, Izuku would end up coming back into normal civilization when he would finally turn 15 years old. And Izuku would return, but realize that he has nothing to come back to. I mean, he's now 15 and there's nothing waiting for him. There's no home-cooked meal awaiting him. There's nothing. He's just alone. And so he would end up showing back up towards Inko's house, realizing that she doesn't live there, and doing a little bit of information gathering, finding out where Inko Midoriya lives, and using the services of the Japan City Police Department, he would end up finding out that Inko is living in a different house in a different neighborhood about 2 hours away. Izuku takes a bus and would make a trip way over there, and once he would arrive, he would end up getting on the top part of the house, looking in through a window and seeing that she looks happy. She's with a wealthy man that looks like he loves her, and he sees a girl that looks a whole lot like him. Green hair, green eyes, and she just has this big smile. She's blatantly using a quirk, and Izuku couldn't help but grit his teeth and think to himself that that could have been him if he just had a quirk. If he was just not born worthless, then maybe he could have got to live that life. Maybe things didn't have to come out this way, and maybe he'd have an easier time living. But through gritted teeth, he would leave and decide that he's gonna make sure she pays someday, but not today. And a 15-year-old Izuku would decide that He doesn't want anything to do with his old life. He doesn't want anything to do with his old persona. He would change his name to Slade Wilson. And so he would then end up making his way towards a salon. When Izuku arrives there, Izuku would think to himself that he wants to change things. And the first thing that he would do is dye his hair. He dyes one half of it black, the other half of it orange, and then he would get contacts. Contacts that would change his eye color from their usual green to a brown, like hazel-like color. After that, Izuku would realize that, he has nowhere to go to. And by the way, I'm pretty sure you guys are like, hold on, how did Izuku get the money to get on the train and go see Inko and go to the salon? Like, that stuff's not cheap, Xehther. Well, he mugged the guy. Yeah, Izuku was pretty much walking. He saw some guy walking into an alley. He tailed behind him and he immediately punched him in the face, dropped him to the ground, said it's not personal, grabbed his wallet and threw it back at him after taking the cash. He had about $200 in there, and Izuku was able to use all of that to do everything that he needed. Eventually, after the process of doing all of that, he would have eventually ran out of money after getting the contacts that he needed to change his eye color. And so, Izuku would decide that for now, he needs to find somewhere to crash at. So, what Izuku would do is make his way towards a hotel, sneak in through the back entrance, make his way inside of a room and just remain quiet. Using the free guest Wi-Fi inside of there, Izuku would be able to simply just look up different abandoned buildings. And eventually Izuku, after exploring 5 different ones, would find one that, even though it is worn down, it has access to very, very various things nearby that he could use to take advantage of. Things like connecting his thing to a water source, connecting his things to internet, and basically making it so that Izuku could pretty much set everything up so that he doesn't have to pay for anything. Like normal people have to pay for utilities, but Izuku will figure out how to do that for free. And so for about a month, Izuku would continue switching hotel rooms and finding different ways to stay at that hotel without being noticed, doing different types of research, and during that time, Izuku would end up pretty much just mugging more people. There'd be a breakout of muggings in Japan, and eventually heroes would try to step up on that and see what they can do to stop that, but they just can't catch Izuku. He's too good at what he does. Eventually though, after having enough money to go buy different things, he makes his way towards a warehouse where he buys a bunch of different things and then makes his way towards another warehouse, the abandoned one, and would eventually end up fixing everything up with the new materials that he would have got. A broom, a mop, a little duster thing. He basically fixes the whole thing up and he leaves it looking really, really crappy and abandoned from the outside, but on the inside, it looks amazing. He fixed everything. The air conditioning is back and running. There's internet connection there that he's pretty much taking, that he set up for himself. And then there also is a water source that is able to come right towards him. So Izuku's living a pretty good life. He was able to figure everything out, and this is definitely like living in a mansion in comparison to how he used to live in the forest. So Izuku, he feels very proud of himself and very accomplished for everything that he's been doing. He then lives there, and eventually after a couple of days would end up making his way towards the dark web, working illegal jobs to get by, and becomes a little bit of a hire to kill mercenary. His first job would be to assassinate some random broker, and Izuku would do it for about, I don't know, what's the equivalent of like $3,000 in yen, whatever that is. That's what Izuku would do. And so he would make his way there, find out all the information that he can about this man, and on top of a rooftop, Izuku would watch as a man would be getting out of his car, making his way inside of a store, and Izuku would just wait. Putting up a hood over his face and a mask, Izuku walks, stares closely, and eventually this man would make his way back into his rich car. It would be like a Bugatti or something like that. And Izuku, he sees the man in the car. He walks up to it slowly. He smashes the window with one fist, and then with the other hand, he would slash the man's throat with a knife, running away and leaving the man to bleed out inside of the luxurious car. This incident would go out all over the news, and Izuku would realize that he needs a better way to kill people and to not be seen. Cameras captured images of the guy with the hoodie, but even though they couldn't catch his face, they caught details of his height and all that stuff. And Izuku realizes that he's not going to do too well with things like a bow and arrow in this kind of society, so maybe what he needs to do is learn how to use a weapon, such as a gun. Izuku goes to a gun store, and what he would do is pretty much use a fake ID, buy a gun, and would then return back to the forest for about 2 months, where Izuku would spend every single day from the moment he wakes up to the moment he goes to sleep, working on how to use these weapons and making sure that he is the best that he possibly could be, with a sniper rifle, with an AR, with a submachine gun, with basically any single type of heavy duty weapon he could find. He would use those and get very, very, very talented when it comes to using these kinds of weapons. He only would accept killing villains, though, for the meantime. Meanwhile, that means brokers and stuff like that. And eventually he would get tasked with a mission of defeating a villain by the name of Wolfram. Now, this villain has a very powerful magnetic quirk, kind of like Magneto, where he can control metal and stuff like that. And he also has 2 allies. One man that can transform himself into a raging beast, and another who can transform his arms into blades. Very, very, very interesting. Izuku would use his brand new skills and talents to easily be able to take them all out in the dim of night. And this job would be worth a lot of money. It would be worth an entire $50,000. And Izuku would gladly accept this job. Izuku would make his way towards the location that they gave him. And once he would arrive, Izuku would realize that one of them was off by themselves. The man who could transform into a beast. So Izuku, using a sniper rifle on the highest building that he could get to, finds his angle and he shoots him. He would end up pretty much taking out the dude with the raging quirk with 1 bullet with the sniper, and it would be a direct headshot. Afterwards, Izuku would run from rooftop to rooftop not to be tracked, and eventually Izuku, realizing that they're now going to be on high alert, decides that it's now or never. Busting through the rooftop of glass, he would end up landing on the ground, and Wolfram would shoot metal at Izuku, which Izuku would barely be able to dodge, this being his first time actually fighting somebody with a quirk. Izuku dodges out of the way, and through trial and error would finally be able to get the job done with Wolfram. Now, it would be a very, very hard fought battle. Metal would be thrown in different directions, Deku would have to dodge, the man with the blade quirk rushes in, tries to slash at him, and Izuku does actually get nashed. Izuku realizes that the way that his fighting style is working now, it's too wild, it's too rash. He needs to develop a different style. And so over the next couple of 4 years, or 3 years, sorry, since he's 15 and he starts UA at 18, he decides that he's going to be working on different fighting styles, trying to become a combat expert, a real assassin. And so after defeating Wolfram and his partner, Izuku would make his way towards different directions, and using the web would learn as much as he can about different unorthodox fighting styles, eventually realizing that this is not enough, going to where the mountains are and where the monks are and spending an entire year training under them, learning their own fighting styles, learning the ways of assassins and things like that. And eventually Izuku would become a very, very, very talented killer, somebody that not a lot of people could say that they would dare to mess with. Eventually, however, Izuku would continue working jobs and jobs and jobs and jobs, and Izuku would finally be asked to kill a hero. However, he would say no, but there would be a lot of money on the table, and Izuku, he just couldn't pass up this opportunity. Eventually, he does so, and after making tons of money, he would end up buying himself some armor. He would end up buying himself different weapons. He would end up buying himself different equipment. He would end up getting himself different gear when it comes to gathering information, more laptops, more gym equipment for his area that he lives in and stuff like that. And Izuku would become very, very, very powerful. Izuku would even gamble with steroid usage and stuff like that to give himself that edge that he really does need, and use like hero gadgets and stuff like that to give himself that extra boost that he needs. Now, you guys might be wondering, what does Deku's outfit look like? He simply just wears a blacked out mask and black armor with a hood over everything so that they can't tell that he's even wearing armor. And Izuku would be known as, well, for now, let's say Deathstroke, because why not? But when he becomes a hero, he's going to use a different name, obviously, but his alias would be Deathstroke. And after 3 years, he's now 18 and the UA exam is right around the corner. 1 week before this would happen, Izuku would find himself in an alleyway completing a job, defeating one hero who he would have been tasked with taking out. And even though this hero wasn't worth a lot of money, Izuku would have ended up gathering information that tells him that this villain has definitely been a part of some very, very heinous crimes, and that this hero doesn't even deserve to be calling himself a hero. He's been covering a bunch of situations up and being the cause of a bunch of unnecessary civilian casualties. Not even Izuku in all the time that he's been being a mercenary has killed a single innocent bystander. But this guy, he's not innocent at all. Izuku, once the shot would be fired, a hero in the nighttime would realize this and would make his way there. This said hero would actually be Aizawa, and Aizawa would lunge in at the situation, using his scarf, would walk up closely towards the direction of Deku, and would say that they can do this the easy way or the hard way. And Izuku wouldn't say nothing. He would simply turn back and begin running, knowing of who Aizawa is. Aizawa would immediately use his quirk on this man, and he would just feel like nothing's happening. And then Izuku would jump from wall to wall to wall, using the double jump technique that he would have ended up learning from, like, jump from one wall to another 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 wall, and basically be able to parkour his way up. Aizawa, using his scarf, he would use it kind of like how Spider-Man does, making his way on top of the roof, and they would finally get into a chase, in which Izuku would finally find himself with the wall, and him not being able to actually run anywhere now, would finally have to turn towards Aizawa, who would throw his scarf at him. Deku would lunge out of the way in a Matrix-like style, grab onto it, and yank Aizawa towards him. Aizawa, who finally comes crashing in, flying towards him, would then get hit right in the face and sent flying down. Aizawa, using his scarf once again, realizing that Izuku was now going to run, would grab onto his leg, yank him down, and jump up into the air, trying to land a very thunderous kick. But Izuku rolls out of the way, throws a punch, throws a kick, and then ultimately would be judo flipped by Aizawa, who he would then stand up, take out one of his knives, cut Aizawa in the cheek, and then using a very, very strange and very recognizable fighting style, would end up landing a couple of blows on Aizawa, ultimately knocking him out and running away in the dim of night. Aizawa, being bruised and beaten by this villain who didn't finish the job but just left him there, would be wondering why in the world this would have happened. But he knew exactly who that was. That was the very famous vigilante who's been gathering a bunch of attention, Deathstroke. And Aizawa, he doesn't like this guy at all. But now, the UA exam was right around the corner, and Izuku, well, let's just say that he definitely wants into that school. So he arrives, he takes the test, and eventually he would find himself in the robot combat portion. Because Izuku is not the kind of person who's exactly like wanting to just defeat a bunch of robots, Izuku doesn't want to gather too much attention to himself, so he would just keep it low key, defeating the bare, like, not the bare minimum, but not enough to attract too much attention when it comes to robots. Just getting like 33 robot destruction points, right? And then when the 0 pointer would come out, Izuku, his body wouldn't be able to just jump and move like Deku's normally does, because he's just not that character anymore. So instead, after seeing Uraraka about to be crushed, Izuku just runs away. That heroic heart that Izuku has in the main timeline just doesn't hold up, and Izuku just leaves her there. Nezu, fortunately, would be able to click a button which turns the 0 pointer off, and right before she would get crushed, the 0 pointer would stop right in its tracks. Izuku runs off, and eventually the test would end. Izuku would eventually get his acceptance letter, and afterwards, he would make his way towards UA, where he would finally get there for his first day of school. Izuku, once arriving, he would end up walking into the classroom and seeing a very, very familiar face. Somebody who didn't recognize him at all. Katsuki Bakugo. And Izuku would notice that he's arguing with another boy. Tenya Ida. One of the kids who would have actually stopped them during the exam and told them not to go walk up to that girl, that it's disrespectful, but Izuku just brushed them off and didn't care. Izuku, seeing all of this go down, would find himself to a seat and eventually realize that there's somebody inside of that sleeping bag. It would be at this moment that somebody would come out and they would say, "Quiet down, everybody. My name is Shoto Aizawa. I'm your homeroom teacher. Put these on and meet me outside." And Izuku would immediately think, Eraserhead?